Someone else.
Claire DeWitt is the best detective in the world. And one thing that comes up a lot is people think I'm joking when I say that. I'm not joking when I say it. She's not joking when she says it. And she is a devotee of an unusual method of solving mysteries, which was originated in the 1950s by a detective called Jacques Salette, a French detective. And it is very much based on intuition and inner knowing, sort of reading the signs and the signifiers of life around you. And it is very much inspired by Jacques Lacan and other forms of philosophy, although none of that is overt in the book. Most of the characters in here are from my detective series, my Claire DeWitt series, which you do not have to have read to read this book, but there's like a lot of overlap. I call it the Claire DeWitt expanded universe, tongue in cheek, because there's a whole bunch of sort of offshoot characters in that world. And then there's one brand new one called Killington Manor, and that has a new character who I would like to write more about, Poppy Killington. It's funny because sometimes as a writer, you do these things over and over, and you see that you're doing them over and over, and you have no insight as to why. And a lot of writers, this is something I've talked about with other writers. Do you want that insight? None of us are ever quite sure if we want to know. I'm not quite sure why if I want to know, or I don't know why I'm always putting these characters in these very life or death situations because I've done it in other books too. I sort of shape them at the same time. I'll sort of have an idea and then go back because you want them to tie together in an interesting way and work together in an interesting way. Um, and yeah, I think very much, I think of the series as a detective series, but it's also a series about a detective. It's a series of books about a person as she changes, as she goes through life, as she develops as a human being. And so getting into the past, is a big part of that, who she was, who she is, and who she's going to be. Yeah, and expanding the universe. I have two that I'm writing now because I really dug myself into a fucking hole. I made this, I've talked a lot about how I love having this big universe of characters, but I made it really so big and so complicated that it's hard. It's a challenge to keep going. And I like being challenged, but we all have our limits. I wanted it to be hard. However, I did not want it to be quite this fucking hard. Um, so there's this overriding mystery in the series of what happened to a friend of hers who went missing when she was a teenager. And I was working on a book for the past 4 or 5 years on and off that really addresses that and really gets into it. And it is an overwhelming amount of information. So now I am splitting it up into two books, and I've just started a whole new book. So one or the other of them will be done someday. But another book might come first. I've done other books in between the books in this series. And I kind of want to keep doing this series for the rest of my life and just do one when I feel like doing one. It's never going to be like most detective series, which are like one a year every 2 years.